We are chanting 28 Buddha's protection. And, light brown chanting book, page 55. To dedication requests, chanting request for Tulip's stepfather, Bart. So he had a stroke, blocked arteries in the ICU in France. Also, please dedicate chanting for Gaynor Mouse and elders who lives in Wales. And also for myself, requested chanting for Sister Vidura. She had one of her knee had a bit of pain. So.
Sadaki sakari bhi parisanam jatasanam ahimsaya chabutiya yande se si mahaviro paritantam bhanamase.
Namo me sapaputanang upananang mahesinang tanhang karo mahaviro metang karo mahayaso saranang karo lokahito tipang karo chutintaro kontanyo janapamoko Mangalo purisa sapo sumano tiro rewato rativatano sopito gunasampano anomatasi chanutamo patumo lokapachoto Narato varasarati patumutaro satasaro sumeto apatipukalo sushato sapalo kako piyatasi narasapo Atatasi karuniko Dhammatasi tamonuto Sitato asamoloke Sojawatatang varo Soja-varato Bhutto Vipasi ca anupamo Sikhi sapahito sata Vesapu sukhatayako Kakusanto satavaho Kona kamano rananchaho Kasapo sirisampano Kodamo sakyapungkawo Ete janye jasamputa Aneka satakotayo Sape puta asamasama Sape puta mahitika Sape tasapalupeta Vesarache upakata สัพเพเตปฏิชานันติอาสัพพันธานามุตตมังสีหนาทังนาทันเตเตสุวิสารธาพรหมจักกังปวัตเตนติโลเกอาปฏิวัติยังอุเปตาพุทธธรรมเมหิอาทารสหินายกะทวติงสาลาคานุเปตาศีลานุยัญชนะธาระยามาปภายสุปภาสัพเพเตมุนิกุญชราพุทธาสัพพัญญูโนเอเตสัพเพขีนาสวาชินามหาปภามหาเตชะมหาปัญญามหาภลามหาการุณิกาจิระสัพเพสานังสุขาวหาทิปานาทาปฏิทาจตานาเลนะจัปปานินังคติพันธุมหาสาสะสารนาจหิเตสิโนสโลกาสสะเพเอเตปรายนาเตสาหังสิรสาปะเทวันทามิปุริสุตตะเมวัจสามนัสสะเจววันทาเมเตตถาคเตคัมเนจาปิสัพพทาสัทธาสุเขนาราคันธุพุทธาสันติการาตวังเตหิตวังราคิโตสันโธมุโทสัพพพเยนะจะสัพพโรควินิมุตโตสัพพสันตาภวะจิตโตสัพพเวรมติกันโตนิพุทโธจตวังภวเตสังสาเจนะสีเลนะขันติเมตตาจอนุราคันธุอารเยนะสุเขนะจะปุรัตถิมัสมิงติสาภาเคสันติภูตามหิทิกาเตปิตุมเหอนุราคันธุอารเยนะสุเขนะจะทักขินะสมิงติสาภาเคสันติเทวามหิทิกาเตปิตุมเหเยนะสุเขนะจะปัจฉิมสมิงทิสาภาสันทินาคามหิทิกาเตปิตุมเหอนุราคันธุอารเยนะสุเขนะจะอุตรัสมิงติสาภาเคสันติยาคามหิทิกาเตปิตุมเหอนุราคันธุอารเยนะสุเขนะจะปุริมัตถิสังคตาราโททาคิเนนะวิรุหโก ปัจฉิเมนะวิรูปัคโคกุเวโรอุตรังทิสังจัตตารโอเตมหาราชาโลกปาลายสัสสิโนเตปิตุมเหอนุรักขันตุอาโรเยนะสุเขนะจะอากาสัทธาจะภุมมาทาเทวานาคามหิทธิกาตุมเหอนุรักขันตุอาโรเยนะสุเขนะจะนาทิเมสารนังอัญญังพุทโธเมสารนังวรังเอเตนะสัจวาเจนะโหตุเตชัยมังคลังนาทิเมสารนังอัญญังธัมโมเมสารนังวรังเอเตนะสัจวาเจนะโหตุเตชัยมังคลังนาทิเมสารนังอัญญังสังโฆเมสารนังวรังเอเตนะสัจวาเชนะโหตุเตชัยมังครังยังกินจิรตนังโลเกพุทธสัมมังนาทิตัสสัมมาโสทิภวันตุเตยังกินจิรตานังโลเกวิจติวิวิทังปุถุรัตนังธัมมสัมมังนาทิตัสสัมมาโสทิภวันตุเตยังกินจิรตานังโลเกวิจติวิวิทังปุถุรัตนังสังฆสัมมังนาทิตัสสัมมาโสทิภวันตุเตสักกตวาพุทธรัตนังโอสทังอุตตมังวรังทิตังเทวมนุสานังพุทธเตเชนะโสทินานาสันตุปัฏฐวาสัพเพทุกขาอุปสัมเมนตุเตสักกตวาธัมมรัตนังโอสทังอุตตมังวรังปริราหุปสัมมนังธัมมเตเชนะโสทินานาสันตุปัฏฐวาสัพเพพยาหุปสัมเมนตุเตสังฆรัตนังโอสทังอุตตมังวรังอาหุเนยังปาหุเนยังสังฆเตเชนะโสทินานาสันตุปัฏฐวาสัพเพโรคาวุปสัมเมนตุเตวิวาชันตุสัพพโรโควินาศตุมาเตภวันวันทรายโยสุขีทีขายุโกภาวะอภิวาทนาสิริสานิจังอุทาปจายิโนจัตตารโอธรรมวาทันติอายุวันโนสุขังภาลังนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะ
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Saturday night, first Saturday night of our rains retreat, the monsoon season retreat, which began yesterday. It's a 3-month annual retreat in our tradition, Buddhist tradition. Full moon of July to the full moon of October is usual. So it's a special period. There's extra rules that get added in particularly around traveling. So we shouldn't change monasteries unless it's an absolute. There's a few reasons we can change communities or move to live someplace else. But otherwise, we all yesterday the entire monastic community made the very formal determination to live here for the next 3 months, at least for the next 3 months until the full moon of October. And leaving, we can go away for up to 6 full days. You have to come back, then you can go again. So you're not locked in, and so it really creates a more opportunity to develop community, to develop and practice in community. Because a lot of the times, there are people in the community traveling here and there for various reasons. So then this morning we began a 7-day period of group meditation retreat, group practice here in the monastery. So all of the residents, all of the lay guests, lay residents, and also anybody like yourselves, they can come here from early in the morning till late in the evening. It's available to all people. And so Dhamma talks every morning, Lumpur Sujito every morning at 8:30, offering a Dhamma reflection, and then we're practicing meditation, walking and sitting meditation throughout the day. So we've got this is the end of the first full day, just settling into this routine. So we've been in the hall since early in the morning, on and off, coming in, sitting quietly, reflecting, chanting, listening to Dhamma. Just a few days ago, I finished leading a retreat up at Amravati Retreat Center. It was they call it a six-day retreat. It's four full days plus a bookends, sort of half days. And at one point, during a reflection that I was offering, I shared something that I've been pondering and reflecting on from time to time. I don't put a lot of time into it, but the thought has come up. If we didn't have any language, so it's a question, if we didn't have any language, any form of language as a human being, no matter what language, like spoken language, but if we didn't have any language developed, what would the mind be like? So it's a question. I don't have an answer, by the way. So it's not like I'm looking for somebody and I'm going to say, yes, that's it, because I don't know. I don't really know. It's an investigation. It's just maybe, but one thing it does make my mind do is go quiet. Maybe a little bit like a Japanese koan or something, because it just makes my mind stop. And it's not why I'm doing it, but so anyway, I shared this with the group during the retreat, because from my own investigations is where I'm suffering is thinking. What I'm thinking is where I'm suffering. We feel pain, like the body feels pain, and then there may be a feeling tone of sadness or joy or something. These feeling tones, but I find the more I investigate that where I'm suffering is thinking. It's the thought processes that are going on over and over, whether they're short or small, especially when we get these habitual formations and these patterns of thinking. And just to share before I go on a little bit more, on the last day, the retreat was over, and I was in the what they call the Sangha room, and so if people wish to come and just say goodbye or whatever, it was just a relaxed, informal thing. And one of the people that had been on the retreat shared that they had had a stroke about 4 years ago, during the sort of peak of the pandemic. Young person, they were probably just in their 30s, maybe late 30s when it happened. And they had a stroke, and it only lasted 3 hours. Then there was a full recovery came on, but they had a stroke. And they said they were completely conscious. They were at the hospital, completely conscious. And they were clear and calm. They knew, I think they recognized their family came in. Like, it wasn't like they didn't recognize them, but there were no thoughts were forming in the mind. Although they knew they were in a hospital, there's stuff going on, but there was she said it was absolute calm. There was no stress, no fear, because no thoughts of future, also no thoughts were arising. No thoughts would form whatsoever for 3 hours. And so it was just, this person shared that it was just clear, calm, peaceful. But then when the thoughts came back, panic. Because what happened, and this is going to affect me for the rest of my life. When the thinking came back, that was when the suffering started. So I thought that was just very interesting. So grateful that she shared it. Very, very, very interesting. And so here again, I don't have any answers, but just to share about how I'm weaving or reflecting a little bit on this question. So, is our goal to end thinking? Now this one I do have an opinion. No. Why would we want to do that? Thinking is incredibly useful. There's just the good that can be done through thinking, and even just an ordinary that can be done through thinking, just ordinary living a wholesome life. It's very useful. Thinking is amazingly useful. And the fact that we can think is being exposed to things like spiritual teachings and whatever. Amazing. So, no, why would we want to get rid of thinking? But then you hear the question asked, if we couldn't think anymore, if there were no such thing as thoughts, language, and if, for instance, that would reduce or limit, or maybe even, who knows, that suffering that the Buddha was talking, if that would disappear or even nearly disappear, wow, give me some of that. Oh no, it's not about getting rid of killing thinking, making enemy out of thinking. So this is just the way I'm reflecting on it. By the way, this is not me saying this is true and this is the way it is. This is just a Dhamma reflection. So the way I practice and understand it from my teachers and Kalyanamitta and my spiritual friends, it's a relationship with thinking. To have a relationship with thinking that is not bound up in dukkha, in that suffering, discontent, dis-ease, pain, unsatisfactoriness. So being able to think when it's, and think whether it's simple or complicated or something in between, to be able to have thoughts arising and ceasing, using language, communicating, having the inner thoughts. We can use, during our silent moments in terms of speech. We can be using the mind very, super skillfully. But also when, to change the relationship to thinking. So that also if we are trapped in some pattern of thinking, or if some negative thinking comes up, or there's a painful thoughts, if you remember something that's that painful has happened to us, and there's a thinking process around that, the mind kicks in, it can, mesh around with it. This is normal. This is human. This is part of being a human being. But is that cultivating a relationship with thinking, where we can also see the not self nature, the nature that this is natural. It's not what we think is not who and what we are. It's just causes and conditions throughout our life that lead us up to this moment. How I'm going to process sense phenomena, sense stimulation, what I see, hear, smell, taste, touch. How I process that now is going to be based on memory of other contact for as long as I've been alive. Where I'm at now says conditioning, our conditioning as a human being, what we've experienced, how that affects our worldview, our view of things, how we think about things. So that will, if that triggers thinking, which let's face it, I don't know about you, but yeah, the mind thinks a lot. That inner voice gets triggered. Maybe we see something, right? The eye has contact with a form. So then there's going to be some sort of feeling tone. It'll be either something will be pleasing to the eye, or displeasing to the eye, painful to look at, or neutral, which is, when we investigate, probably, I would say it's probably safe to say that a lot of what we're just seeing during the day is of the neutral nature. But that's still a sort of in the middle feeling tone. So then that will trigger, if especially in the pleasant and painful, that'll trigger some sort of more of a response. So maybe we're wanting more, or maybe we don't want it, we want less. It'll create a feeling tone, a response to that. And it's quite likely going to trigger some thinking, I thought. So how we see something, and if we're in tune with our inner voice, oftentimes it's like, well, I don't like that. Ooh, that car, boy, that's bright. Something. We can't. At least here again, I'm just sharing the way my mind works. You see something, that has some sort of, it stands out from the ordinary, and immediately the thinking goes in. It's not just left with a feeling tone. Not just like pleasant feeling, pleasant feeling, pleasant feeling. It's like when I walked through, just walking between here and back to my hut. And I was walking underneath the trees, and it just, amazingly green and full and just vibrant right now. And so I was walking, and at first I was with the feeling, and then the mind kicked in and said, and I thought, oh wow, now those little catkins are already falling down, and then autumn is going to be here in a couple of months, and then the mind kicks in, and we get this story. And so that's the other thing. I sometimes use language like where the if I just been with, oh right, the catkins are falling down, full stop. But what happened was I caught myself putting the comma or the colon and going, oh, and then autumn's going to come, and I don't really like it when they all fall down. I really like that tree when it's full. So then there was this feeling of there was a little mini, grief, a griefette, little grief moment of already projecting 2 or 3 months in advance. So that was the story. It was where that little road down the rabbit hole of suffering began. Instead of I just like, oh, all right, they're falling. Stop. Or isn't that tree amazing? That awe of this tree. Full stop. Pleasant feeling. So with mindfulness, we can develop this. Now, here again, we're not trying to kill or eliminate, eradicate, annihilate thinking. But it's just, being more in tune with when thinking is necessary. And then when it does come up spontaneously, which it does, of course, for most of us, is it okay? Just, being with that mindfulness, we can also catch us if we are going down, creating a story which will lead to suffering. It's a story where we suffer. So with meditation, I know the first several years that I was meditating, because I'm eternally grateful for the little bit of instruction that I got. But I just kept trying to get rid of, just squash thinking. And I was always judging my meditation on how much thinking there had been. And even if there had just been, a fairly low amount, I was saying, well, I was thinking that was a terrible meditation. That was how I was thinking. So it was this judging based on content or on the amount of thinking. And I was suffering over that. Instead of looking at, well, what's my relationship to the thinking? And look at not seeing the suffering that I was experiencing from just from the mere thinking. Whether it was a good thought or a bad thought, there was this feeling of lack, this feeling of failure, this feeling of being diminished or not good enough. So, although I was mindful of the thoughts of thinking or no thinking, I wasn't mindful of the results of thoughts. So this is, so when whatever arises in consciousness. So right now I'm focusing on thinking process and the inner voice. But whatever arises, through the eye, so we see, or through the ear, nose, tongue, body, intellect. So through mindfulness, and so noticing what lands, what stands out. But here again, can we just, how can we cultivate being with those things, so it's not going into the story. So going back to my original question, so how do we tell stories? So through language, through words, through thinking words, or through speaking words. And so, and that doesn't mean that we don't, because somebody's like using words in meditation through Dhamma reflection. We can use no words. We can just reflect on the feeling tone. So on the contact of what the eye sees, what the ear hears, what the nose smells, and so on and so forth. We could just be aware that with that bare sense experience. But we can also, with language, reflect, using these, all of these, thousands of teachings that the Buddha shared with human beings that have been passed down. These different ways, using language. He used language to get us to have tools to reflect on the human experience. And so, in meditation, using those myriad lists. I'm not saying that we should use too many at once. Just choose one, right, or whatever. But to use these teachings, bring up language, bring up words in our Dhamma practice. Bring up maybe a list of Dhammas that the Buddha shared to look at. Okay, what's the experience in this particular thing? Hold up these mirrors, and that's using language. So skillful use of language. However, what do we do when we're, here again, when we're trapped in cycles of unskillful thinking? And so I know the practices that work the best for me is this giving them space, this noting, mindful, we're aware when the pattern comes up, the thoughts are there. Speaking with a lot of other people about this, in my own experiences, oftentimes when we shine the light of awareness, the light of mindfulness on that, when we notice and shine a light on that, oftentimes it just drops because it's been seen, a bit like the pickpocket in the train station. As soon as they've been seen, they maybe look and see somebody staring at them, putting their hand in a purse. Apparently, by the way, I've never been a pickpocket, so. But I've actually saw this. I did this myself in Italy once when I was a layman. I spotted somebody do that, and I looked them right in the eye, and they immediately took their hand out and just disappeared in the crowd. So sometimes I feel like it's a bit like that, when shine the light of awareness on something that's unfruitful, it's arising in the mind. Yeah, it just tends to just lose its power and drop. Now, it doesn't mean it doesn't come back. I know, but it just keeps it. No, loses its power. There's a distance between the witnessing of what's arising and what has arisen. The object that's arising and the witnessing that are two different things, and so there's somehow space, and it just takes away the sting. I'm just sharing my own experience. And over time, this just weakens things. So noticing these patterns, because the thoughts and emotions fall under the category in the Pali tradition, Pali scriptural tradition of sankharas. So sankharas mean things that are put together. They're put together. They're formed. They're fabricated. Also, one of the translations you don't maybe see so much anymore is habitual formations for sankharas. Habitual. They're habits of the way we respond to sense data. And the habits. And with mindfulness, through seeing, and because it just stops the moment. It puts a pause. It's like a little circuit breaker, is the way I like to think about it. And when just that pause, here again, we're breaking the habit of unskillful response. So if it's like a channel, this sort of like a rivulet, when we see, for instance, I was going for a walk through the forest the other day, and I've been away a lot, but I had the perception, going down a slope track, I had the perception that we'd had some heavy rain, sharp, heavy rain, because there were the evidence of rivulets had been formed. And so for any of us who have ever tried to change the course of water, so maybe in our garden or somewhere where we want to change the course, okay, it's been going there a long time, but you can create ways of changing the habit of that water. You can change the habit. And so you need to be aware, okay, it's doing this. I don't want it to do this. I'd like to change this habit. Then you can take moves to do that. And so I like to think that mindfulness is sort of putting a little, changing the habit of the direction of our thoughts or our habitual responses. And even just in mindfully doing that already there's this reduction of this dukkha, pain, because we're working with it as an object. We're no longer trapped inside. But I know for myself, when I get into a thought pattern, and it's unfruitful, unhelpful, unuseful, painful. You feel, my own feeling is in it. And it's that, it's the nagging voice, or the critical voice, criticizing, get trapped in our own righteousness, believing in that we're right. And maybe on a worldly level, on a mundane level, we might be right in terms of social norms or social acceptance and things like that. But that voice, it's that voice, the belief in these things, the belief in our thoughts, the belief in thinking, or the over-grasping at thoughts. This is where arguments start. And this is how wars are fought, in grasping at our own, believing in our own opinions and views. And does that mean we shouldn't have an opinion? Of course not. Does that mean we shouldn't have some sort of view? Of course we should. But it's the holding, it's the grasping, and this is where, with really all sensory experience as a human being, and there's going to be, here again, painful experiences, joyful experiences, pleasant. Most of life probably a bit in the middle, but it's not the problem. It's the clinging that's the problem, the grasping, the wanting to either annihilate what we don't want, whether that's thoughts or feelings or perceptions, whatever. Annihilate what we don't want, get rid of what we don't want, get rid of the people around us that we don't want to be with, situations, or cling, grasp, trying to constantly replenish and refresh the things that bring joy to us and bring us pleasure. And so it's the clinging. And does that mean we never try to replenish what's good around us? Of course, we can, nourish what's useful and wholesome. Right? Water the roses, right? Give them some plant food. Don't water the weeds. Don't give them fertilizer. Don't give the weeds fertilizer. Nourish, but we don't have to kill and annihilate and fight and struggle and argue. There's an inner argument, the inner tyrant, getting trapped in our thinking, or whether it's outwardly. Because oftentimes, going back to this reflection where I started about language and words and thinking, especially when we talk about language and words, is that it's often, at least in my own experiences, where we're maybe talking about or thinking of it just in terms of what comes out of our mouth. And what comes out of our mouth. But when we look deeper and using, considering what I've been trying to reflect on, share this evening, it's first of all, everything that comes out of the mouth, language-wise, started inside. We all know that. It's not hard to figure out. It all began inside. And so, but what goes on inside is probably for maybe even most of us, I don't know, is that there's a lot more going on inside than what comes out. Okay? And maybe that's not a bad thing. Okay? I don't know. And oftentimes living in an ethical framework, within an ethical framework like we all trying to do, for instance, the precept, the fourth precept of the 5 precepts for the lay community says, I undertake the precept to not lie. And sometimes it's been translated in enhance as not to use harsh speech, because there are other the Buddha emphasized many different aspects of speech, not to be divisive or to use harsh speech, to use false speech. There's a few things. Also just useless speech. And so when we're thinking of the precept, then we're probably most likely thinking about what comes out of the mouth. But in terms of Dhamma practice, I'm constantly or frequently encouraging myself, and I just want to share that encouragement with everybody else. Is it, that apply those same things. If we want to use those, for instance, those terms, apply all of those same things to what we're thinking, and also develop this really acute, sensitive sense of honesty with ourselves. Not deluding ourselves, not suppressing things through and repressing things through thought, not deluding ourselves, not kidding ourselves, not twisting things around. The inner committee, the inner committee that can convince, the inner lawyer, the inner solicitors, and things like that can twist things around and try and make something into what it's not. And with that can be such a huge benefit to our practice. Really being clear, and not shying away from seeing something that maybe we don't want, we don't like, we're maybe uninspired by within ourselves. But if we don't see clearly, then how are we going to then change those habits and patterns through mindfulness, through discernment? We need to see so that we can let go. So I think I've shared enough on that this evening, so I'll end this reflection now.
So we're closing evening tonight with chanting reflection on universal well-being in Pali, Dark Brown Books, page 40. Ahang sukhito homi, nituko homi, awero homi, apayapacho homi, aniko homi, sukhi atanang pariharami. Sape sata sukhita hontu, sape sata awera hontu, sape sata apayapacha hontu, sape sata anika hontu, สัพเพสัตตาสุขีอัตตานังปริหารันตุสัพเพสัตตาสัพพทุกขาปมุจจันตุสัพเพสัตตาลัทธาสัมปติโตมาวิคาชันตุสัพเพสัตตากัมมัสสกะกัมมัทายาทากัมมโยนิกัมมพันธุกัมมปฏิสารณะยังกัมมังการิสันติกัลยาณังวาปาปะกังวาตัสสะทายาทาภวิสันติอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวะพุทธังภะคะวันตังอภิวาเทสวากขาโตภะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามา